Uh, Thanks everyone for taking the time today to join us on this session, Product Lifecycle Management. You see a few QR codes on the screen. Those are links to our LinkedIn profiles. So please feel free to grab your phones and we can stay connected through LinkedIn. A quick introduction in addition to what Dinesh already mentioned. I'm a senior product manager at Sprink. Sprink is the most flexible B2B payments platform. We are 2 years old and we're founded in Amsterdam in 2021. Prior to Sprink, I've worked in Mambu. It's a cloud banking solution as a product manager for cards. And at Visa in Bangalore, where I was responsible for reconciliation, risk, and the developer portals. On the whole, I have 5 years of experience all in the payments domain. So, Sindhu.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thanks again for having us. I'm Sindhu. I currently work as a product owner at Backbase, which is an engagement banking platform. Engagement banking is a paradigm shift to architecting the banking itself around the customer and the customer needs and life cycle. We as well was founded in Amsterdam, and we have our main office here. Little about me, I'm a developer turned PM with about a 5.5 years of experience working at Visa, now at Backbase, working specifically around payments, reconciliation, alternative payments, and developer enablement. Before we jump into our talk and its agenda, I want to quickly introduce you to our YouTube channel called Behind the Product, which is me and Sneha collectively have been making videos to share our experience, our journey to product development from a development background and some quirky thoughts as well, mostly around the payments and product here as well. You can follow us and here. Now, as per the agenda for today, it's very simple. We will be introducing you to what a product lifecycle is and take you through a journey of deep dive of different stages of product lifecycle management. And then we can have a session of a Q&A.
So, yeah, don't worry. We're not going to speak continuously for 40 minutes. We'll definitely take breaks and we'll let you ask questions along the way. So, yeah, cool. Coming to the introduction of what is product lifecycle management. Before we even get there, let me ask you a question. What is a good product? I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. And at least to me, a good product is one that is very customer centric. It truly solves a customer's problem and that the entire business revolves around that core problem. And when you iterate continuously, uh, yep, and when you iterate continuously to solve a problem better and to solve all related problems, then you would have essentially already done or been exposed to some part of the product lifecycle. So, what exactly is product lifecycle management or PLM? Whatever you call it, a strategy, a method, a process, anything. But it's a way for businesses to generate ideas, iterate over them, build them, and after it's served its purpose, to even dispose them in a very structured manner. It involves a lot of collaboration across the teams, people, processes, data, and systems. Through all the collaboration, it brings out extremely good quality and a lot of profitability for the business. I'm going to go into the first stage, which is introducing a new product. So it's the ideation phase. It all starts with a problem. So first you have to ask yourself these questions. Are there any gaps in the market? Or have you come across a new regulatory change? Are the competitors doing something different? Or is there a new trend in the market? So when you ask yourself these questions, right, you will realize that there are some gaps. And these gaps are problems which will eventually lead you into ideas. So, for example, recently we've seen that there's a huge number of spike in the Indian startup ecosystem. There are a large number of unicorns and startups which have just popped up. And shows like Shark Tank really add a lot of fuel to this fire. And everyone wants to be part of the success and growth of these startups. So, in this space, There are two startups which came up, which I've also recently come across. One is Tyke and one is ESOP Dhan. So these both target different segments of the market, and they make sure that people can make money out of the rising number of startups. So basically, the sooner you identify any movement in the market, then you will have a better competitive advantage. Next, the next stage is when you have a product, when you have a problem to solve, but then what? You have a problem, but what happens next? And this is that phase when you're trying to define what the problem is. You dive deeper and you try to find out what is required. It is about testing the waters with an MVP, a minimum viable product, or an MLP, minimum lovable product. So both of these are used in two very different scenarios. Once that's done, we have product development. You have a problem, you've defined how you want to solve it, and now it's the time to actually build it. That is what product development is all about. Your due diligence is done, you've validated it with your MVPs. Now you're built, and now you're going to build it. Next phase is about the launch and growth. So you've built it, you've launched it, there's a problem, you want to solve it. Now, in this phase, you will get a true verification if people actually resonate with the problem you found. And if it does, then it is time for you to actually grow it, expand across geographies, and really blow up and scale it. And the last phase is decline and discontinuation. So, a lot of people usually wonder, or I'm very less aware of this phase, but when I joined Visa in my first experience, the first product I worked with was in this phase. So fortunately or unfortunately, that's where I started off. But yeah, when your product is in this phase, you see that your roadmap is rather empty. You don't know what to do next, and the growth has become steady. There's no upward trend, and possibly even declining. So that's when you begin to migrate your users to a new product to give them, like, a natural path to go ahead, and then slowly bury the existing product. So a few examples which are more common can be Picasa or Orkut. These are products which Google has stopped. So yeah, before we dive deeper into each of these five different stages, I'd like to pause for a few questions if anyone has any.
You can either comment or raise your hand.
Which phase throughout product lifecycle management, according to your experience, is the most crucial? So this largely depends on the phase your company is in. So for example, if you are a startup, you'd probably be spending a lot of time in discovery, ideation, and validation. But if you're someone who is in the growth phase, like, you started 10, 15 years ago, you've reached product market fit, and then that time prioritization and growth, the maintenance, support, and these phases are more important. So it actually depends on which stage your product is in before you can decide which stage of the life cycle is more important. Any other
Thanks,
question?
Neha.
Yes,
Yes.
someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, please unmute yourself and have a conversation. Yeah, we encourage them.
Okay, so now we have taken a quick glance at the what our product lifecycle management is. As you know, that we as a PM, we are involved in throughout this journey, and it's important that like we are engaged and involved and throughout this journey. So when you take a look from afar, it looks huge, but let's take baby steps, go deep, and understand more about each phase. In this section, I want to talk about four things. One, what is this phase about? Two, who is responsible or accountable or who will be working majorly in this phase? Three, what are the key competencies which are required to be successful in this phase? And some tools which has proved helpful for us. First, let's start with implementation. You might be intrigued in asking why are we starting with the implementation first? This is because I am a developer turned PM who have actively contributed to development or developing a product majorly in the starting phases of my journey. I felt it's nice how I will take you through a journey of how we learned a product lifecycle. So once the PM has established what this particular product is useful, and these are the details of how to define it, he or she will involve the product development team for the implementation of the product. I'm sure most of you would be very much aware of the step because this is the most visible and effort consumed one across the board. Give me thumbs up or thumbs down if this is the most exciting phase or a tricky phase in your product management life journey. Okay. Yeah. So while you're at it, here the team consists of engineering, design, implementation, like developer, QA, technical writer, etc. They will be given with the high level specifications on how the product should be in the form of maybe a business document or a wire mock or a mock-up or a user story, etc. Eventually, the goal here is to build and test the product. The input to this phase is a requirement from the product manager, and the output of this phase is the built and tested product, which is ready to release and launch. As a PM, we claim that we don't have much to do in this phase. We can take a backseat and chill. But let's be honest and tell how many times have you been pinged incessantly during this phase? Like comment a random number, but we are always troubled the most during this phase because this is right. Although we don't majorly are responsible for items during the development, it's very important that we own as much as a product development team in clearing their doubt, solving their problems, unblocking them from the situations, and such that they can develop the product smoothly. So we need to be available during ceremonies like Scrum, etc., to answer their question so they get unblocked. Once the development is done, in any enterprise company, it goes through quality assurance, beta, or user acceptance testing. And once the PM and the stakeholders are satisfied with the product and agree that we are done with the implementation phase, we head to product run launch. This phase is about making the product available to the user in the market. Before I jump in, I want to ask you to comment on what are the three most important checklists in your list as a PM once you're done with the implementation and is ready to launch. Let me take a moment there to see what are your top three thoughts or checklist during this phase, or even problems.
No one has any problems with launch.
Okay, so let me share our problems or our top three checklist which we have used. When the product launch phase kicks in, a PM gets really busy and excited. At least for me, I'm assuming for you as well, because we have put in a lot of effort and love in the building this project. It's time that we release it so the user can embrace it, gets benefited, and show some love and revenue towards it. Yeah. So here are the two important things we have done as a PM, which has really helped us during this phase. One, internally, we need to educate and prepare our sales, customer service, support, etc. about the product. They should be knowing what is this product, how to use this, what is the product position in the market, etc. So they're well equipped during the product launch. Other than this, externally, we will be taking care of demos, product pitches, etc. so the customers understand what the product use and what the product is and how to use it. Along with this, it's super important that we should not forget about providing necessary documentation, tools, and user guides, which are needed to support the product launch and the product use itself. Taking an example of a personal experience, we were working on a reconciliation product, which is not, it's kind of a proprietary thing, which was worked at Visa. It was super important that we document the steps, FAQs, common issues, etc., and educate the support team so that if any issues were faced by users, it doesn't come to the development team or a product manager itself and get addressed immediately. So even the customer feels it's so seamless and nice that they're getting answers quicker. There's another important thing for a PM to take care here, and that is success metrics. Because before you came up with the product itself, you came up with a hypothesis that this solution will solve a given problem statement. Now, it's necessary for us to prove that this solution really solves the problem. And one way to prove that is using the success metrics. We need to define the success metrics before the launch and track it after the launch. For example, let me take an example of one of the most used product, Google Maps. It was built to provide driving directions or to provide direction to a defined destination. Now, during the product launch, we could provide them with how-to videos, feature videos, FAQs, etc. Success metrics could be number of completed trips, number of searches near me per month, number of trips per user per month, etc. So keep track of these. First, it's really important that we define the metrics catering to our product, to the problem we are solving at this time, and make sure we measure this once the product is launched so that it gives us a glimpse of whether our product is successful or the problem is right, but the solution isn't. This kind of validates your product and also gives you a glimpse on whether it is useful for the user. The goal here is simply successfully deliver the product to the user and make sure they're able to use it and in a seamless manner.
Next, so now you've seen how to launch products and what is involved. Once you've launched a product, then comes growth. It's important that you grow your product. There's only one goal, literally one, for this entire phase. It is just to scale, 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 and reach so much that the entire market is using just your product. So that is the goal of growth. Your focus should be on moving the metrics and the metrics which really matter. So I'm going to continue with the Google Maps example, which Sindhu started off with. And let's see what happened. People had a problem. They wanted to reach a destination from a source. Google identified that there's no standardized way to do this, and they developed and launched Google Maps. Now, after the launch, this has brought in some traction, and it's time to grow. One important area here is to understand that support and maintenance is of high priority. Because if your product is not stable and it is not reliable, in turn, it will not be usable. No one's essentially going to use it. So Map solves this because they are almost 100% available and they're constantly improving their performance. Next, Maps also adds new features based on community feedback, because it may have just started with routes for cars, but now it has direct integrations to public transport or shared transport like Ola, Uber, etc. And then it goes into all these local markets and it customizes the app for each country. A specific example is Netherlands. So here we have cycle roads. So there are cycle maps in Google. And in India, we have a lot of two-wheelers. So there are bike paths in Google Maps. So though the core technology in the background is same, it penetrates deeper into the market and it enhances the reach. So in this phase, what you're trying to do is you're not just solving the core problem or the gap which you've identified, but here you're enhancing the product with pleasurable features. Okay. So what are some examples of these features? Though I'm going to continue with the Google Maps example anyway. So you have a route, you have the modes you can take, and then the new feature is You can find hotels, fuel stations, shopping areas, etc. along your route. And these features are just pleasurable because you may not need them, but they're definitely nice to have. So this builds a lot of stickiness with the users, and this is important for the growth phase. Once we're done with growth, oh, okay. So when I was actually working at Mambu, the product I was working with was in the growth phase. And now as we move to product discovery, this is where majority of my work lies in, as I am with Spring. So a lot of you may be thinking, wasn't product discovery the first phase which we're supposed to start? Why are we even just randomly bringing it somewhere in between? So I understand and I resonate with you, but the problem is that many of us as product managers, when we step into a certain product, we are usually not the first people to come in. Uh, we are not we are not joining in a product when it is in its ideation phase, unless you're actually doing your own startup. Well, in that case, it's completely different. But for majority of us, we've stepped into products which already existed. So product discovery is a phase where you continuously work to refine your products through deep understanding of the problem. So this can be done through market research, through competitor research, or feedback sessions directly with the customers. Product discovery, unlike the other phases, is a complete team effort. So it is the responsibility of the tech team, the sales team, the marketing, customer support, everybody. So all the teams need to come together and share their insights and observations. Now, coming to a few important skills is you need to be curious and you really need to be creative, because you can have all these conversations and you can have all the data, but what is the point if you're not able to use that information and convert it into insights? So, yeah, coming back to our Google Maps example, how would product discovery fit in? So, let's say you're doing market research for Google Maps. Okay. One of the recent trend, or which you see across all the countries today, is that everyone's trying to become or strive towards climate neutrality. Okay. Some want to be carbon neutral by 2030, some by 2050, etc. So seeing this new interest in the market, what did Google Maps do? They've introduced a tiny green flag, green leaf sort of an icon beside the route, which is the most sustainable route amongst all the alternate routes. So this may be a simple algorithm in the backend, which just says that fuel consumption along this route is the minimum. So this is the most sustainable route. So, small measures like this, when it actually reaches the level of audience which Google Maps has, can create a very significant impact. That's why product discovery is essential, and it helps you stay updated with the happenings around you, and it helps you maintain your competitiveness in the market. Okay. Now I'm going to be moving on to roadmap and prioritization. As PMs, majority of our lives revolve around this. But yeah, it is just one phase of the entire life cycle, and I wouldn't say it's more or less important than any other phase. So you have spent some time on discovery. You have a bunch of features you'd like to add to your product. Okay. These may be coming up based on market research, competitor research, customer feedback, everything. And each of these requests also come from different teams and different interactions. So road mapping is the process where you're trying to create a shared source of truth. That means all the various people and all the various ideas have a shared view, and it defines which one will be done when against time. So it outlines the vision, the direction, and the priorities against time. That is what a roadmap actually represents. So, if we understand this with a few examples, let us say Maps has two feature requests. The first one is it's a Friday evening, the roads are busy, I want to eat out at a restaurant. What is the closest parking spot what is the closest parking spot? Is it empty? What are the fees involved? So today, Maps doesn't have this feature. But a few days back, it didn't have the feature about the sustainability route as well. So when both these features are on the roadmap, what happens then? It is time to validate the need of these features. Which one is more important compared to the other, and which one aligns with the larger organization goal compared to the entire list of features? So through road mapping, right, product managers generally rank all the features that are available through multiple techniques. Some people have heard of the RICE technique. Some people use the should have, could have, must have, won't have, the Moscow technique. But there are many frameworks, and different people prefer different ones. And once the features are ranked, this alignment, it makes it easy to show which one needs to be done first and which one follows next. So a few important skills in this phase is, of course, you need to be able to communicate really well because there are a lot of people involved and everybody has conflicting opinions always. And you also need to have very good understanding of your product, your business, and its goals. Without this, you can't really push for this direction which your company is going in. So, yeah. Some tools which have actually helped me in this process is we as Sprint, we currently use Zeta.io. It's also a startup which is in the space of creating a product management tool. Something which is around for quite some time is AHA, which also helps in the same space. Now to the last phase, Sindhu.
Requirement gathering. Once your roadmap is ready, and we know what is most important than the less important one, which is based on the prioritization, it's important that we define them, because the product development team which builds need to have a little bit more detailed understanding of how it should look like, not just in the form of a problem statement like we are building a map so we can go from one direction to other. They need little more than that. So of all the tickets or issues in the backlog which are prioritized and put in a roadmap, needs to go through this journey of a detailed definition. This is where a higher level of specification of a product is outlined. This is where everybody understands what functions this product has to do, how should it look, how should it behave, what should be the performance, what should be the acceptance criteria, etc. and so forth. I'm interested to know if you're involved in this phase ever, or ever actually participated in the gathering of the requirement. What is the toughest or biggest challenge you faced? Or maybe what platforms or tools do you use for requirement gathering or requirement analysis? Okay, I'm going to talk about it anyway based on our experience. Most of us spend a lot of time in this phase providing and defining what is the problem statement, who is the user group which we are targeting. Because if you take any feature, there is multiple user group where you could solve the problem or you could add the feature, but you need a little bit more targeted audience for your product, at least for an MVP. How does it solves the problem? What's the impact, and how does a user gets benefited by this solution? Maybe even tying up to financial benefits to the company, etc. So our developers or our development team who is building really understand the heart of the problem and what they're building and how they're contributing to the product itself and to the problem itself. And don't forget about some of the assumptions and dependencies you will have. Depending on the team and the nature of the product, you can define the product or requirements in the form of either a user story or a business requirement document or a mapping document from a database column to other database, or a wireframe or a mockup, etc. it It precisely depends on what kind of a product we are building that will be the output of the requirement analysis and gathering. Taking an example of a map here, again, sorry, we are boring you with the map, but that's something which we use on a daily basis. So we thought we could connect easy. So taking a use case of real time location sharing. What's the problem statement here? We are solving the need for people to share their real time location. Now, what are the users? There are many users which we can target here. It can be anybody from bikers to riders to tourists to common people, etc. So we could define what user group or user persona we are targeting as part of the current feature or a product release. And then we define a scope. In like the scope here could be a person A should be able to send the location to a person B in the form of a link which can be opened in Maps app, and a person B who receives this link should be able to open this link, a clickable link, and be able to see the real-time location of a person A while he or she moves. We could use We have many useful tool here which many enterprises use. It could be from Jira to Confluence to Rally, Figma for any mockups, Notion for any note taking, OneNote, etc. You can define how you want to work here, but it is really nice that if you can identify the most efficient way where you can represent the requirements in the form that everybody understands this. Now, the most important thing here is to understand that we will be collecting a lot of data points from various maybe internal teams or stakeholders or external clients. It's important that as a product manager, we have the logical acumen to do the data analytics and put in form that it is uh, in a form of a user story or a form that it is understood and clearly gives enough details for a product development team to pick it up and build the product how we meant it to work or how we meant it to be. Now, these requirements are laid out beautifully in any tool place, then it can be handed over to the product development team for the development itself.
Okay, so now taking a step back, right? I'm going to zoom out and just show you the entire. My zoom out is not working. Okay. So you zoom out and then you see the whole life cycle come together. So you have the development phase, which leads into the launch and growth. And then you have identification of the problem and defining the problem and making it more detailed. So what as PMs who come in from different background, if you're someone who comes from a technical background, you would actually be a lot more involved in defining and developing compared to the other two phases. But if you're someone who's transitioned into a product manager through an MBA or from sales, marketing, and domains like that, you would actually be more involved in the growth and product discovery as a product marketing manager, product growth manager, etc.
Yeah. Also, as you can see, this whole full circle correlates to what we spoke in the starting about the different phases of product life cycle. Like taking an identification, this identification is done by in your real life work of product manager by product discovery. The definition of the product or a feature is done by requirements gathering, prioritization, roadmap. And the development is done by implementation by the product development team. And later, the launch and growth. After the growth, the decline phase kicks in. Here, you know your metrics you're measuring for the success of the products or the impact or the revenue when you know that it is decreasing constantly or you don't have any tickets in your roadmap or in your backlog. This means it's eventually the time to migrate to a new product or a solution itself, making sure that you will gracefully burn the product so that you can move on to a newer solution or a newer tool or a newer product. It's also important that which it was actually asked by someone in the starting that what phase is the most important one. Just reiterating it, it all depends on what kind of company you are in, what is the stage of the product, is it in the new or a growth or a maturity phase, what's your vision and mission for this particular year. Like for example, I'm working on a product which is in Backbase, which is there for about 3 years. We are really in a great shape. It has reached a technical maturity model. Now it's time to evangelize it. Now it's time to make sure that people know how to use it, guide them. So what does it mean? That we are working on the documentation side of it. So for any product, for that matter, it really depends on what stages of the product you're in, and that's where you most of your energy. And it is important that you understand what's your goal, what's your vision, what is the stage of your product, so that you can channelize all your energy there, so contribute to the better product, and so it is useful for the people. That's all we had about product lifecycle management. We would like to know if you have any questions or any challenges you had in your work space, so we could maybe share our thoughts around that.
Cool. So, as most of you think about your questions, there's one in the chat already. So, I'm just going to start with that. Uh, will the cycle involve with UX design, or is it only for the developer and product manager? I can take this. So, what I'd like to say is the UX designer is actively involved in the requirement gathering, as well as understanding the success metrics after the launch. Because to define a product, it's not just the back end, but the user experience is extremely important. So that's why the UI designer is also involved in the entire experience uh, towards implementation and launch. Sindhu, you can add anything?
Yeah, like any other feature we are developing, even the UX will go through the cycle of MVP, etc. You come up with the initial design, and how it looks, and then maybe you develop that, and then you take a feedback, and then the whole feedback loop goes on. So UX is equally important as like a developer, and they will be equally involved in the whole product life cycle.
One more thing I'd like to mention here is these tools which I've mentioned, user testing and full story. These are tools which, yeah, okay.
No,
These
you're good.
are tools which we actively use, and we can see how people are interacting with our UI of the product, where they're confused, and anything, how do they use the product. So our UI designer of our team, she actively sits and reviews all their user experiences, and through that she comes up with insights, and she's able to suggest enhancements to the design where something is not clear, where something's extremely clear, etc.
While somebody may be asking another question, I want to maybe mention one more point here. During this product discovery, there will be a lot of things we as product managers will be doing. It could be you're interviewing, people to understand more about the problem, more about maybe an initial thought of a POC of a solution you have. After you get those things, it's very important that we learn and understand how we can get these details, because not every time we ask a question and there's an answer. So we need to creatively think about, maybe we send a forms, Google forms, or we send emails with drop down or a radio button options, or or we try to ask for some score like NPS, etc. So if none of these asynchronous way works, then you can jump on to having a call with them, etc. So there are multiple ways you can really explore creatively to gather the points and important things you need during the product discovery. There is a question.
Can you share some best approaches to understand the market need so that the positioning of the product can get planned? Okay. So trying to understand about the market, right? So at least how I approach this is firstly, being in the B2B space, I try to analyze what are the trends, what is the market size, where are the countries it is like, what is the flow in each country. For some countries it might just be like, okay, it's a B2B company, I'm just going to do a bank transfer. But for some companies, even for businesses, they may use modern techniques like UPI. So it really depends on the market. And to me, I think it's just a bunch of googling which really helps. And also I try to find insights from competitors, because the new features and the latest product releases they have also really help you understand, and you also question yourself, why is someone doing a particular thing? So did they see something in the market? Is that why? So for me, that's what really helps.
Okay. I will take a look at the next question. When it comes to road mapping, is this the only strategy which is responsible for is the strategy is only sorry I'm going to read it again. When it comes to road mapping, is this something only strategy is responsible for, or can UX join in? I want to maybe put a little bit light towards this based on my experience. Before even I go to road mapping, what I do is you have some epics. Okay, that epic could be a development task itself, or the epic could be a documentation task, or the epic could be a UX task. It's very important that we prioritize this first. And how do we prioritize? We take inputs from all the stakeholders. Maybe because for a developer to even work on this or build the backend or the actual working of it, they need the UX. So you try to understand the dependency of the features or epics you have, number one, and define the priority and then put the roadmap. I would say UX, development, document, all are the works which we needs to be done eventually, so they will be equally responsible for it. But maybe one more point to note here is that if your goal is to improve the UX, then UX becomes more important item. If your goal is to deliver a working product, then just a bare minimum, really good and useful and user friendly UX would be enough. This is my understanding on that. Okay. When do you know you have achieved an MVP? Does it transition to growth phase once the MVP is completed? I've mainly worked on 0 to 1 products, and drawing the line on MVP was always a problem of a company. Okay, this is interesting because even I have, maybe I can add here some points, Neha, and then you can add more. Even I have worked on a 0 to 1 product. As you said, it's really difficult to define an MVP. That is why you break your features into different buckets, like what is must have, what is nice to have, what is good to have, what is need not be there right now. So, and you should always tie up to your vision of the product, or what the problem, what which the problem, problem is solving. Like for example, we were working on a reconciliation product which has three parts to it. One, you pull the transaction and do the reconciliation. Second, even if you before you pull the transaction for reconciliation, you let the transaction happen. So the transaction, reconciliation, and the third is about auditing, like making the auditing more automated. So it's very easy to understand that transaction is must have. Without the transaction, the whole feature doesn't work. You can't even go ahead with any other feature. Then comes the reconciliation, that once the transaction data is available, you can reconcile. And the third one is just a nice to have product, which is the auditing or making it more beautiful. So when you define your features as an MVP, you build that, you launch it, you deliver it, and take feedback. It's very important that you take feedback to understand if what you defined as MVP is really an MVP. So you can use that space of feedback to test that as well.
So,
um,
in that space, I have a question too. MVP, of course, we can gauge it via customers and the product adoption kind of thing. That is one part. Do you how do you include the revenue part in MVP? What is your thoughts on that, Sneha and Sindhu?
yeah. So firstly, how do I define? Uh, there's an echo. Yeah. So, firstly, how I define an MVP is that I see if it has a functional feature, which means without that feature, the product is useless. Okay. Then there are reliable and usable features. Okay. Which is improving the stability and the maintenance of an MVP. Now, when you come to pricing and revenue, right, I would definitely test it on the functional features. Okay. So, because the functional features are what mainly solve a problem, those are what should be tied with the revenue. All these pleasurable other additional ones are just value adds, which probably are features developed based on feedback, etc. But yeah, the functional should be directly tied to one of the pricing strategies like subscription or pay per use, etc. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, yes. So Sindhu, you want to add something? Because wherever we see this MVP, it all talks about the features, or it has tables to some point, and the curves and all of this are okay. But um, the challenges which the 0 to 1 companies or the startups do face is, when do they start getting the ROI, right? So the revenue model takes an important picture, what I see with the PMs nowadays. So yeah.
Yeah, a same point to add here, that even when I was working on a product which was related to billing, it's really important that the billing model was more important to build because that ties to the revenue. So a lot of energy and concentration goes there, but we need to understand that the dependencies are also covered. That's the only way I look at it as, and it is definitely case by case. Um, we have to look at.
Understood.
Do you want to take the next one, Sneha? Which MVP strategy do you choose? Any specific ones do we use in general, or does it depend?
uh, I think I've recently come across this, that there's an MVP, there's an MMP, and then there's a
MLP.
MLP. Okay, so MVP is minimum viable product. Like as long as you can test the waters, it's good. So MVP is useful when you're trying out a brand new idea, where you can just pick the main feature, or the one thing which solves the problem. But MLP, or a minimum lovable product, should be something which you try when you have a lot of competitors in the market. So you need that slight advantage over the other players. That's when you do an MLP. So I think to me, just the market and the positioning at that time would decide how do I pick an MVP strategy. But yeah, it depends on the market. What agile ceremony is your favorite, and what do you think has most impact? Working at a startup, I really think we use the sprints, and I don't have any particular favorite, but of course the stand-ups, because you get to understand what everyone's doing, and you're the most updated with it, with the product, with the happenings, with the team, etc.
Yeah, for me, it is refinement, because that isn't like once we have discovered what features we need to add, prioritize, roadmap, everything is kept. It's very important that we communicate to our development team that what is that they're building and how it is impacting and such things. So the refinement phase itself, like the stories refinement, is something I liked, and I feel it's super important, because if I miss, or what would I say, if I lack in the refinement phase, that communicating the necessary needs, I feel it's not going right, because then developers will have a lot of questions during the development, will get to know about a lot of dependencies during the development. So it kind of disturbs the next cycle. So I feel for me, refinement is something I always concentrate and take all my efforts. Yeah.
Cool. So I don't see any more questions. We really hope we've answered your questions well to whatever you were expecting.